Hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm just. Hello, everyone.
Hello. Hi.
Just us. Hello, everyone.
Hello. Hi.
Just us. Hello, everyone. Hello. I'm looping my voice. Yeah, I just had a surreal experience. Now can you hear me? Yes, and I cannot hear myself. So welcome everyone. We have a Skin Talks today, which will be with the three artists that you can see on Zoom now, Valerie Wolf Gang, Martha Kicsiny, and Max. And they will show us their video works and talk about it. And then we're going to have a discussion based on it. So if you will be able to fish your questions to us, we'll ask that. Otherwise, we're just going to have discussion between four of us. And as the name of the event says, Skin Talks, all the works of the artist deal with the body and skin and physical and have some similarities, but I think also individually are very strong and different. So I'm excited for all of us to watch it. And I think we should start. Yes, so we'll start with Martha.
24. akta, 87. nap. 𝗍𝗵𝗁𝗀𝗃 személy, 10:33. 10:34. C személy áthalad a 735. térmegfigyelő ponton, nyugati irányba halad. 10:35. A C személy betér az 𝗧𝗹𝗃 épületbe. 10:35. A C személy az 𝗧𝗹𝗃 északi szárnyát összekötő folyosón halad. 10:35. A C személy idegesen érkezik a 7. váróterembe. Leül. Vár. Most nyugodtnak tűnik. (10:36) A C személyt behívják. Bemegy a 7. terembe. 10:37. Működési hiba a 𝗍𝗶𝗃𝗀𝗀. Semmi nem látszik, gyanús körülmények. Rájöhettek a 𝗍𝗶𝗃𝗀-ra. Lehetséges ok: a C személy lesötítette a termet. (10:38) A C személy kijön a 7. teremből, távozik. 10:38. A C személy áthalad az 𝗧𝗹 északi szárnyát összekötő folyóson. 10:38. A C személy elhagyja az 𝗧𝗹 épületet. 10:39. A C személy kelet irányába áthalad a 735. térmegfigyelő ponton.
Can you hear me?
Thank you, Martha, for your work. Do you want to know?
Thank you, Martha, for your work.
Do you want to know?
Thank you, Martha, for your work.
Do you want to know?
Thank you, Martha.
Maybe in the meantime, I could say thank you very much for the opportunity for this to be shown, and thanks everyone for watching. Should I start talking about my work then? Yeah. Well, this piece of mine called Operative Gaze is in the basic, in the core of it, it is part of this kind of line of projects by me in which I always create architectural spaces out of human bodies, out of naked human bodies. And this is to reflect on power structures. But always I have a slightly different focus with each project. And with this project, the main focus was surveillance. And but in two senses, partially the sense of the kind of state surveillance in the Soviet era, in the Soviet bloc, because I'm half Hungarian, half English, and I was kind of trying to understand what kind of the imprint I could see in Hungarian society today of the surveillance system of the past. And secondly, I wanted to reflect on the contemporary technological methods of surveillance. Obviously, CCTV cameras are a very retro, a kind of the basic method of technology of surveillance, and since then, obviously, there are many more complex methods, but still, I chose this as a very simple optical method of surveillance. And regarding the production, what I'd like to say is that I originally planned to shoot this with real people, and I had a crew of 40 extras who were going to be the wall and the floor, but COVID hit, and that's why I started to work with 3D modeling, and that's how I created this project with 3D. And I taught myself, like, lockdown happened a week before the shoot, and then I straight away taught myself to do 3D modeling, and then I did this in a few months afterwards. And actually, I'm quite grateful for that, because I think when I use real people in my projects, I think that can be misinterpreted, or it can have a slightly more sexual connotation than I wish to have, because I'm more interested in this kind of in a more sociological, historical, psychological aspect of using the symbology of the human body and the naked body instead of a more sexual or individual or intimate way. And the whole kind of structure of these places, because I mean, I'll focus more on the symbolics of the naked body, I guess, because I think that's what could connect to the talk the most, connect this project to this talk the most. And basically, there is one person in these four different spaces, who is getting surveyed, and they do have clothes and they do have hair. And this is obviously a stark contrast with the naked figures who form the spaces, who are naked and hairless. And for me, that was a kind of a very, and also that the person who is moving, who can move and can move freely, can look freely, while the naked people are completely tied metaphorically and cannot move and cannot see and cannot interact. And I think that's a very interesting kind of duality that people are subordinate to a situation when they cannot, for example, see, and they cannot become a witness. They can't become an equal witness to the other people in the situation. And for example, that's one of the reasons why I always choose to make these figures face outwards so they can't see inside the room. And also I think it's an interesting question about the sexuality of this, that I think the way that these naked figures form the space is actually void of sexuality. And I think it's interesting that the figure moving with clothes is actually maybe has a more sexually present body, because I'd say that actually one is like the difference between a nude and a naked person, or like one, like I think nudity becomes sexual and personal when the person is first clothed and then becomes unclothed, and that's a process of intimacy, and that's the kind of method of getting closer and more, and yeah, to getting closer to the emotion of that person, and also the sexuality. And it's interesting that I think when someone is constantly naked, then that does not become intimate, that doesn't become exciting. And some people say that this reminds them of the visuality of the Holocaust. And I'd say, for example, there is a parallel in the fact that, for example, there are lots of there have been many images of naked bodies, alive or dead, and obviously due to extreme malnourishment, they were not. I mean, mainly because of that, those were not sexually nude people, but just completely generically entities void of sexuality or gender and things like that. And I think that's a kind of interesting parallel as well what does nudity mean in what various contexts is, when is nudity a shame or when is it a joy? And I think these are very interesting questions. And I think, it's who has the ability to hide their body and then to show their body to those who they chose to show it to. That is a very interesting duality. And also it was, for example, I don't believe that these are all like androgynous figures, and it's some people think that these are women or men, and it's amusing to see that some people even project genders into the various figures within one image, even though they are all the same figures. So yeah, that's an interesting issue as well. And in general, so what we can see is this process of someone getting surveilled. We can see this process of an agent creating a report on someone and on someone moving around and creating a narrative of what they're doing, how they're doing it, why they're doing it. And I wanted to kind of face people with this process of creating a narrative, of creating a report which is apparently objective, yet reports are always written by subjective beings, humans. So there's definitely a kind of contradiction in that. And that's why I wanted to hear the actual process of it being voiced, to hear that this is a normal human being who's saying this. And I was thinking how actually reports, like secret police reports, actually can be very similar to scripts, only with the contrast that scripts are written before action happens and reports are written after action happens. And I think that's definitely an interesting parallel with, for example, filmmaking or theatre. And it was interesting that I found some examples of Hungarian playwrights and film writers who actually were secret agents at the same time. And for me, that pointed to maybe there's a similar logic to that, or maybe their report writing fed into their art, or their art bled into their report writing, which again enhances the question of how could it ever be objective and not fully subjective. And what I did to get this, I found that this, so that obviously there's this big question of who will say this text. And I didn't want to have an actor read it out loud, because I felt that their voice would be very intellectual, very artistic, very well pronounced, well voiced. And I thought that, well, actually, why not try to find someone whose actual life is looking at these kind of CCTV footages for all their days, and that is the way their brain works, is that they always analyze these images, because I thought I believe that would be truly authentic. And so what I did is with my sound engineer, we got a microphone and walked around the center of Budapest and knocked on the doors of schools, and I asked the porters of schools whether they'd like to read this text for us. And although 2 said no, but the 3rd did agree. And he looked at us to see are we good people or not, and then he was like, okay. And we did it secretly, because we don't want the legal stuff of the school allowing this. But it was just a very quick recording, and it was the only recording we did with him. And I really think that it works very well. And I think there's an authenticity to the ruggedness of his voice, to the way that he analyzes the imagery, and also how his voice is not immaculate, how it isn't perfect, the way that he reads it, and how sometimes he does have some faults. And if for those who know Hungarian, there's an interesting kind of dialect to his voice as well, which kind of makes it archaic. And some people have said that they thought that this was an original recording of a Soviet era secret police officer, because there is this timelessness to this voice. So I definitely think that's an exciting point of this. And actually next week, the audio of this film will be screened on a radio station in Hungary. So that'll be also very exciting to hear them. But also, regarding the skin as the human body and skin as a wall, obviously there's like, who's the brick in the wall, because and in Hungarian as well, there's this expression of the brick as in the secret police officer within a group of friends, for example. And that was always a problem in Hungarian society, that you couldn't know in any group, like even in your family, literary friends, football team, anyone, you couldn't know who was the secret police officer. So that gave this kind of continuous paranoia and continuous self-censorship that was part of everyday life in the entire Soviet era. And I can still feel that today present in society, that people don't know what to say out loud, don't dare to voice their opinion, don't know how to voice their opinion even, don't feel like they have that they are able to, or that that's like part of democracy, that you could talk about these kind of things. So I definitely think that this is a kind of still part of this kind of collective subconscious of the country, and that this, and also the distortion of the fisheye lens with which I created this 3D imagery, primarily wanted to remind us of CCTV cameras, which have got fisheye lenses, but also I think it's a very, very expressive way of showing the distortion of perspective that comes forth when one sees this society and within these with this situation. And also there's been like I've just been in this project which is about dealing with the archive of the National Psychiatric Institute, and there were reports of people who who were delusional, and they thought that there was a secret agent in their minds who was writing reports on their thoughts, and then they fell in love with them. So there are these extremely bizarre effects that and cases which developed from this strange situation in society. And what I think is also an interesting thing is how in our current era, presumably we don't have people writing that many amount of files about ourselves, about who we meet, what we say, etc. But I think it's this interesting question of do we want this? Do we like this solitude? Do we like this freedom? Or is it frightening? And is it very lonely? And that the way that we use, for example, social media and use these applications, I think is a bit as if it's this process of self-reporting, of creating an archive of ourselves, as if like the big brother state is not doing this on us, then we should be doing it. For example, when around 10 years ago, there were these endless quizzes on Facebook of like, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite food? You like cat or dog, mountain or beachside, and things like that. And we would obsessively all fill these in because somehow it was a good feeling to be categorizing ourselves. And again, with, for example, like sport apps, which say, which document where you go, how much you walk, how much you run, what's your blood pulse, how many calories have you eaten today. That is also this kind of method of self-archival and self-reporting. And I think the twist comes when, for some reason, someone does want to use all this information which has been accumulating seemingly without any bad intention, for example, Cambridge Analytica. And it's, again, this question of like, are we fully aware of what we're doing and why we're doing this and what power we're giving into hands of corporate companies, for example? And we're creating commodities of ourselves with our data. So that's why I think it's really interesting, well, and mainly important to kind of reflect the past era's archival process, reporting process, and to kind of understand what it can mean when a political or economic power has all this data on us. As again, like social media knows who we talk to, how we talk to them, what we talk to them about. And it might make us think that actually this kind of secrecy is something which is really important for us to look after, and what issues can develop if we don't look after this sufficiently. So that's why I think it can be quite insightful to learn from the past and to kind of remember these issues. And obviously there's an interesting question of that since the Soviet era ended, we kind of like, that's like, and then they close the door and close the box, and then we can reflect on that easily because that's an era that's ended, and now either we can look at those papers or they've been destroyed, which is obviously super problematic, but there is this kind of cut in the lineage of government, which is why we are able to easily understand what happened, or more easily understand. While, for example, in the West, there hasn't been this change of power which would enable us to understand the structures and the power systems which have been working since the Second World War or earlier. So again, I think that's why, for example, the historical, the history of the Soviet era can be something which also helps the wider world to even understand mechanisms of state, which, for example, cannot be unveiled currently when there isn't this cut-in lineage of politics. So yeah, so that's my kind of the way that I aim to create this connection between these two eras and surveillance, and use the symbolics of the human body to convey this thought. So I hope that was maybe understandable and interesting. And if you guys do have any questions later on, then feel free to ask them to me. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that was very detailed and interesting. So thank you. And I think that although you planned it with humans, but the fact that you also made it 3D just make it so contemporary, like this digital surveillance, although it was not the original plan. So that just matches everything you said also.
Yeah, I think it worked a lot better like this. I'm very glad that turn had to happen.
Yeah. I think we should move on further. And we'll now look at Valerie's work, which is called Vanishing Act. And it will...
Burning away the body. With it, my identity was burnt to the ground. Spacesuit, the Vanishing Act. The project Vanishing Act was inspired by the various studies of astronauts that are being set in space for the first time. I was very much interested when I was reading about their experiences when they gaze down to Earth for the first time and see the Earth from another perspective. Suddenly, they have this out-of-body experience, this transformation of thoughts, how they see the Earth floating in space, and they get completely the feeling that they are out of their body. I had a similar experience when I was lying in bed one time in my artist in residence apartment in New York. And in the middle of the night, I wanted to go on the toilet and I didn't turn on the light, but there was this bright moonlight kind of atmosphere and I was passing a huge mirror which was set in the bedroom. And suddenly I thought that there's somebody else in the bedroom. I saw my own reflection in the mirror, but I couldn't recognize myself. And I was really shocked because I was looking at the same time at myself and I couldn't understand what is happening. That wasn't me in the mirror. And the reason why that was is that I recently lost half of my body weight. So I lost 60 kilograms. And immediately after this process, I went to this artist in residency place and I actually had, for the first time, a chance to have a good look at myself in this huge mirror. The process which happened was actually that 2 years ago I decided I will completely change my lifestyle. Before that I was quite sedentary. My work was mostly in the office. I was editing videos, films, and I wasn't doing any exercise. And I was eating a lot, of course, because I enjoy food. I still do. I still eat a lot. But now I'm running, I'm biking, I'm hiking, I'm constantly moving. So now I'm finally living the healthy lifestyle, which I was supposed to live back then, but I wasn't aware of the importance of the healthy lifestyle. So in the previous 2 years, I completely changed my life. I lost 60 kilograms, and in that moment when I was working in artist in residency, I actually for the first time realized that I lost half of my body weight and I couldn't recognize myself anymore because my body completely changed. This experience was very profound for me. It was like this moment in time which you remember forever, and I still remember the feeling. And at the same time, when I was working at the residency, I was collaborating with NASA and European Space Agency on another project, and I was reading and studying various astronaut studies and their experiences in space for the first time. And I recognize a couple of similarities in these feelings when they gaze to Earth for the first time and have this out-of-body experience, and the same experience I had when I saw my own body in this different perspective. So this was the kickstart for my research into the area of body, space, and identity. In the process of me losing weight, my body was of course completely changing. The skin was becoming too big for me, for my body. Below my skin I had empty space. The skin was like a rug being put on me. And with different techniques I was trying to document these changes which were happening to my body. I was scanning my skin, taking detailed photos, and I was inventing various techniques how to use scanners, cameras, and all other tools which I normally use in my everyday life to document the skin. And later on, after I finally reached my desired weight, I created this big collage of the skin changes which you can see as part of my work. Because I really like to work with new media and various technology, I then later on fed all these materials to the neural network engine and decided that I will use my skin as a platform for neural networks and artificial intelligence to be creative on their own, to use the materials of my skin documentation and play with it. So the computer's algorithm started to change the texture of my skin and created things on their own. I created a map of the skin changes, and I was starting to look at my body as a alien planet which is not discovered yet, and through the process I'm still learning how to accept it, how to move in space, because suddenly I'm not taking as much space as I used to. It's actually, I'm taking half of the space less that I was used to. So for example, if I go on the bus, if I'm sitting in a room, I actually feel a huge difference now, because when I sit on a chair, there's a lot of space left around me. And especially on a public transport, for example, back in the days, I almost took 2 seats with my own body, and now it's only 1 seat. So there's a big difference. How am I now reinterpreting the space? How am I using the public space? And I'm actually researching a lot about that, how these influences in body changes are also influencing your own personal identity and the use of space around you. So in a way, I'm now treating myself as an astronaut being put in space and rediscovering these foreigner planets. In the same format, I'm now using my skin as a metaphor for recreating the spacesuit for astronauts. So, metaphorically for me, the skin is now a spacesuit which is protecting me from outer space. Metaphorically and symbolically speaking, of course, this means that the skin is a layer between my inner self and the outer world, the society. So when I'm going out of my room, for example, and interacting with various people, this skin is now like an astronaut suit. Actually, after the process, I had so much skin on me left that it wasn't shrinking enough, and the doctors actually recommended me that I go through this skin reduction operation. The operation itself was long and exhausting, and they recreated the skin on me, they tightened it, they took a lot of it out of my body, and when they zipped me up, when they saw me back, I actually felt like they made a new suit for me. So this suit is like a spacesuit, scaphandre, which astronauts use in space. So with this project, I'm setting myself out in this space, and I'm for the first time actually turning all of my art practice in my inner world, in my inner self. I'm setting myself out to these new voyages, new missions to explore new worlds around the topic of body, space, and identity. And the whole project actually started a few years ago with the project titled 𝗧𝗵𝘁, when I was actually questioning myself if artificial intelligence can be creative on their own. I wondered if artificial intelligence can write poetry, for example, without our suggestions. When I was starting the project 𝗧𝗵𝘁, I realized that I have to limit myself a little bit when working with neural networks, because there is unlimited amount of topics in this world, and just out of curiosity I decided I will feed the computer data with scientific articles about healthy lifestyle and recommendations about the water intake, how to take care of your body, how to be active. And in this case I limited whole neural networks pool at least a little bit, so it doesn't go crazy, but that it starts to write poetry out of all these scientific articles. It was actually a very funny process for me. It took me around 3 months to create this program, which was writing and generating various poetry. And in the process of working on the project for 3 months, I actually, in a way, brainwashed myself and relearned from the artificial intelligence back, because while I was teaching the artificial intelligence to be creative and how to write poetry about the healthy lifestyle, at the same time it was also teaching me back how to live the healthy lifestyle. And in my subconscious I was constantly getting this various data about the topic. So at the end of the project, when it was exhibited in a gallery, I actually said to myself that maybe it's time that I do something creative as well with my body, with some changes in my lifestyle. And this was the turning point for my life, when I decided I will lose some weight, I will start to live more healthy. And this was yeah, this was 2 years ago, and since then I lost half of my body weight, and it was also the starting point for the new project, Spacesuit Vanishing Act.
One way to tell if you're hydrated. What is a healthy lifestyle, exactly? Next, grab a tape measure. Insomnia and not getting a good night's sleep can be frustrating. Avoid rewarding children with sugary snacks. What's the big deal? Water flushes out toxins and waste. But what about the earth in general? Now imagine the air without water. Women have less water than men. This water makes up a significant fraction of the human body. Oxygen and nutrients are distributed throughout the body. Dehydration is one of the fastest routes to low energy. Digestion starts with saliva. Under normal conditions, water is eliminated from the body through sweat, urine, feces and tears. Even a mere 2% reduction in body water can decrease performance, affect short-term memory, focus and increase fatigue. The body changes over time. Dehydration can lead to heart failure and death. Your skin is the largest organ. To function properly, all the cells and organs of the body need water. Water is required for breathing. It is assumed that the ancestors of humankind developed the ability to run for long distances about 2.6 million years ago. Starting a new habit is hard, especially when it's one you kind of dread. Pick your distance. It's never too late to start running. As time goes on, make the running intervals longer until you no longer feel the need to walk. We can use running as a tool to improve the way we think and feel. Many experts consider exercise to be the closest thing to a miracle drug. Every time you pound the pavement, you stress your bones and cartilage. So who's right and who's wrong? Overuse injuries result from taking on too much physical activity. It's the only method proven to prevent Alzheimer's. This is considerably less effort than government recommendations. Not everyone is convinced. A little bit is good, but a little bit more is probably better. Running gives you the time and space to clear your mind or think through a problem. After tedious or stressful days at work, it's difficult to muster up the energy. But what about the things you might stop doing in the name of your longevity? You don't have to go overboard. It seems that for every expert who tells you a certain food is good for you, you'll find another saying exactly the opposite.
This year's festival topic, burn, is actually pretty much connected with what I was going through. You know, my body was literally burning the calories. I was burning, I was disappearing. I was, you know, evaporating. Half of me evaporated in this space. And it was just in a time when this pandemic started, when the society started to change as well. So I think that the whole process not just taught me how to relearn my daily activities, how to set up my new goals, my new daily life, everyday things which I'm doing basically. But also with this pandemic, I think I started to think about a society in a broader sense. I realized what's important and what's not. I learned the importance of mind and body connection and psychophysical good fitness and activity. So meaning that we need a good balance of fitness, you know, how we can take our bodies into the world, but also an amazing fitness and condition of our inner world. So this 𝗬𝗃, the spacesuit in this project, is very important because it's the physical limitation between the inner balance and outer world, and I think it's very important to talk about these topics, to discuss all of these ideas, and not just go into the direction that we need to meditate, take good care of mental health, but also take good care of our bodies so we can be successful in our careers and in personal life. In the past few months, we have all been dealing with a lot of changes, with a lot of adaptation, a lot of also unpleasant moments, but I think now it's a perfect time to rethink ourselves, to connect, to have great mind and body connection, and to think about our skin as this spacesuit which is protecting us from all the harm from outer world, from the society, politics, bad news, and that we take really good care of this spacesuit, because through this spacesuit we can also put a lot of nutrients into our body. If it's very healthy, we can move around, we can be in really great physical condition, and when we are in really great physical condition, we can also take good care of our mental health. So I hope you will also go through this burning project, but I'm not meaning just to get rid of a few kilograms or a few pounds. I'm thinking more into the direction of getting rid of unnecessary stress, of all unnecessary concerns, and just be focused on what your goal is, what your emotions are, and what you want in life. Just be very direct, say what you want to say, express yourself, stay true to yourself, and follow your dreams. Even though this is of course cheesy, but it's the reality, it's the truth. And once you will really feel this, you will feel the passion in your heart, and you will start burning in a positive way. And I hope that you will reborn in the end like a phoenix rising from the flame. I'm sending you all a huge virtual hug from Ljubljana, Slovenia, and I really hope next year I can visit you in person so we can together enjoy some fresh new production.
Thank you, Valerie, for your work.
Thank you for watching. I already expressed a lot in the video. I prepared it in a way to be explanatory already because of this online condition. It's meant to be installed in space, so part of it is also material set up in the space, but in this case, I decided to mix my experience and explain a little bit what's happening behind. And yeah, definitely in my work, the skin is the main canvas, and I still see it as a playground from which I will continue my work and connect it with neural networks and all the technology. So in a way, I really like the fuse of the virtual world with the digital components and all the new technology surrounding us.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I agree. The video was very, very detailed. But then in discussion, we can talk
Yes,
more.
If the audience, of course, has some questions, please ask me. And the main starting point, of course, is my personal story, my personal experience. And for me, this work is very intimate. I usually work with things I notice around me. I mean, quite political and social things which are happening in the country or in my close surroundings, but this time I decided to really focus on my own body, my own skin, and this profound experience which happened in my life. And it was like a platform for further research.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we'll move to the last work by Max that is called Pain Map Total Recall. And then Max will share with us also the insights about the work, which will happen in Russian, and I will be translating simultaneously.
Okay. I came from darkness, I came from the inferno. I have been hurting myself for many years. Whenever I was overwhelmed by mental pain, I will transform it to the physical realm, where for me the pain was more bearable. The transformation of pain was achieved by cutting myself. This brought relief to my mental pain and also provided me with a sense of cleansing, with a cathartic effect. I recently decided to leave this dark place and stop inflicted pain on myself, and thus force myself to develop better ways to manage my pain. To gain perspective on those many years of self-destruction and mental pain, I set out to map my self-inflicted injuries. I grew cultures of bacteria and yeast into a skin-like substance, and then I reconstructed the cuts previously inflicted directly on my skin, on the skin-like substance. This was also an exercise in curbing my impulse. Growing the skin substitute takes about 2 to 3 months, and patience was required. At that point, the act of cutting had to be accurately implemented based on the scars on my body. Therefore, I could not use the blade impulsively, as I was used to when my own body was involved. I used my own blood to reflect the level of mental pain I experienced. I usually used my blood in my work because I find it to be a wonderful fire-like substance, symbolizing life, pain, and death. Each reconstructed cut was placed on my body, on top of the original cut, and then photographed to create a map of my pain. In addition to that, a picture of each scar was made. The pictures were arranged chronologically, and together they created a series forms a timeline of hurt. I view this work as a parting ritual from my old self. By parting from my harming self, I hope to give birth to a new half of me, like a snake that outgrows his old skin before shedding it. So did I.
Okay, now you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so hello, I will speak Russian and Helena translate me. Во-первых, я очень рада здесь присутствовать на фестивале.
Well, firstly, I'm really happy to be here at the festival.
Мне очень понравились работы Марты и Валерии. Работа Валерии произвела вообще очень сильное, мощное аудиовизуальное впечатление.
I really liked Martha and Valerie works, and especially Valerie works really left a strong audiovisual impact on me.
Окей. Теперь попробую говорить о своей работе, которую я представила, которая была представлена здесь.
Now I will try to speak about my work that was just now exhibited here.
Во-первых, мне очень странно говорить о этой работе на русском языке. В принципе, я не говорила на русском уже много лет, но в какой-то момент я просто, у меня была проблема чисто ментальная из-за собственной идентичности, но в последнее время я снова много говорю на русском, и все в порядке.
So, firstly, it's really weird for me to speak in Russian about this work, and I haven't spoken Russian before for quite some time because I have personal mental problems and identity crisis, but now everything is fine and I speak Russian a lot. So now all is good.
Okay. Собственно, я начала делать этот проект уже, получается, много лет назад. Я начала его делать, мне кажется, в 2016.
I started doing this project many years ago. I think it was 2016.
Это, собственно, идея проекта родилась после того, как я по собственному желанию попала в психиатрическую больницу. То есть я в какой-то момент решила и поняла, что все, как бы хватит, и я не могу так дальше жить, как бы нужно что-то делать. И так я попала в больницу на 2 недели. И, собственно, когда я оттуда вышла, я начала думать о том, как бы поменять себя, как изменить себя.
So the idea started after I spent voluntarily 2 weeks in psychiatric hospital, because at that time I decided that it's enough and I need to do something with my life and change it. And I went to the hospital for 2 weeks. And when I got out of the hospital, I was starting to thinking how to change my life and what to do next.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Я не знаю, как это получилось, но... То есть у меня было очень твердое решение, как бы... Не только решение, очень было сильное желание как бы измениться, потому что прежде всего... Ну, это какой-то был первый момент, значит...
So I don't know how to explain, but I really had a strong decision and a really strong desire as well to change myself.
Окей, да. Окей, проект, я делала этот проект почти 3 года, то есть смысл проекта, и идея, и цель была в том, значит, чтобы, ну, как бы окончательно, во-первых, переварить прошлое, понять какие-то вещи и, ну, как бы изменить себя, но не поверхностно, а очень глубоко, как бы. То есть у меня все это заняло почти 3 года, но как бы я достигла цели, и, то есть, я действительно перестала делать себе больно, я перестала думать так. Helena.
Yeah. So I did this project almost for 3 years, and the whole point, the whole idea, and the goal of the project was, to process the past and change myself, but not to approach it superficially and on the surface, but really dig deep there. And it took me 3 years, but I accomplished my goal and I reached what I wanted, and I stopped inflicting pain to myself, and I stopped having those thoughts.
Ну, помимо того, что происходило как бы за кулисами проекта, в общем-то, то, что я сделала, я документировала, сфотографировала, значит, ну, те раны, которые себе, как бы, у меня были на теле, которые я себе сделала. То есть это была первая часть проекта.
So, besides the backstage, how it was done, I was documenting and taking photos of all the scars and wounds that I inflicted myself. So that was the first part.
Мне уже немножко сложно вспоминать, что я там делала. Значит, вторая часть, значит, уже более, ну, как бы важная, да. И я, значит, вырастила vegan leather, ну, как бы заменитель кожи из камбучи.
So in the second part, which is more important one, so I grew this vegan leather, the replacing the human skin, which are made out of kombucha fungus.
Да, совершенно верно, из чайного гриба камбучи, да. Значит, я как бы... Окей. Зачем я вырастила кожу из камбучи и как я ее использовала? То есть то, что я делала, я восстанавливала на основе как бы, сфотографированных порезов, свои настоящие порезы на коже из камбучи. Окей, то есть я брала кусочек кожи из камбучи и делала там такой же надрез, как бы рану, как у меня на теле.
So I was recreating the wounds from my skin and based on the photos and transferring it to this new skin I made out of kombucha and making the same cuts that I had on my body.
И, значит, во-первых, кожа из камбучи очень похожа на человеческую. И, то есть, то, что я делала, я просто брала вот этот кусочек кожи из камбучи, на котором уже был сделан надрез, прикладывала его к настоящей ране. Значит, соответственно, нужно было, чтобы визуально воспроизвести рану, нужно было использовать либо кровь, либо краску. То есть нужно было, чтобы это выглядело как рана.
So, because the kombucha fungus looks really similar to human skin, and especially with the cut, so I was attaching it and placing it to the place with the actual wound on my body, but to make it visually look like a real cut, I had to use either paint or blood to recreate the full wound.
Совершенно верно. То есть, во-первых, в принципе, как бы для меня очень важна аутентичность и, не знаю, настоящесть, не знаю, как это на русском сказать, вообще как бы, и в жизни, и в искусстве, то, значит, я использовала свою собственную кровь, то есть я брала у себя кровь из вены по нескольким причинам. Во-первых, для меня важно было, как бы, что это настоящее, а во-вторых, то есть сейчас я уже не испытываю той, как бы, боли, внутренней, как я испытывала тогда, но как бы я использовала кровь в том числе для того, чтобы как бы to reflecting the level of mental pain.
So, because in general, authenticity is very important for me, equally in life and in my art. So I was using my own blood that I took from my own vein to put on the cuts on the kombucha skin. And firstly, it was because it looks real and it is real blood that is important to me. And secondly, although I'm not experiencing the same internal pain that I was experiencing on the times I was making the cuts, but the using of the real blood helped me to reflect on my own mental pain.
Соответственно, то есть этот процесс приготовления камбучи, там, резания, там, использования крови, как бы за этим стоял еще очень внутренний процесс, который у меня происходил, как бы вот это вот перерождение. Это как бы неотделимая часть проекта, окей, как бы то, что происходило со мной там за кулисами. И, то есть я там уходила в прошлое, я все анализировала, как бы, вот. То есть это было очень сложно, и это был очень сложный период.
So the whole process of the project, making the skin out of kombucha, making the cuts, taking and using my own blood, it was not only making the art project, but a huge internal process for me, because it was a rebirth of me, and it was a inseparable part of the project, which was a really, really difficult part of my life, because I had to analyze everything and reflect on my past. But that was not separated from art making itself.
Yeah. Okay, so ну, и разумеется, в конечном итоге это произошло, и я уже как бы не тот человек, я хочу что-то пояснить. То есть человек, который делает себе больно, ну, режет себя или там whatever, причиняет себе боль разными другими путями, это не просто человек, который там делает себе какие-то физические раны на теле. Это определенный state of mind.
So at the end, it happened. My goal was reached. I'm not the same person as I used to be anymore. But I want to clarify that the person who is inflicting pain to themselves, different ways, in different, not only by physical pain, but especially when it's a physical pain, it's not always, it's always not only what we see on the surface, that is physical wound. It is a state of mind that is different.
Да, то есть это связано, это отражается абсолютно на всех остальных аспектах жизни. То есть, например, я приведу один пример. Я никогда не говорила ни с кем об этом, я это скрывала. Допустим, я могла просто исчезнуть и не выходить из дома там 2 недели. И как вообще странно об этом сказать. Я это скрывала вообще от всего мира, и мне было очень стыдно. То есть до той степени, что я всегда ходила в вещах, допустим, с длинными рукавами. Окей? Всегда.
So, and this state of mind reflects on every aspect of your life. For example, I give you an example that I would never ever mention all of this to anyone. I could just disappear and not leave my home for 2 weeks. I was hiding this, I was ashamed of this, and I was always wearing the clothes that would have long sleeves and cover all the wounds.
Да. Я, пожалуй, как бы начну заканчивать. Значит, когда я закончила этот проект, то, значит, он появился в сети, и я стала говорить о нем, и меня спрашивали, как ты вообще, ты сделала это паблик, то есть общедоступным, то есть это в сети, это там еще где-то, все могут это видеть, как ты вообще к этому относишься, как ты это переживаешь.
So when I finished the project and I started to talk about it openly and I put it publicly online, many people started asking me my attitude towards it and how does it feel to have this work public and exhibited in many places and now to talk about it.
Значит, это очень важная часть проекта, и я сделала это намеренно, то есть открытым для всех, потому что как бы мой месседж и мое желание как бы сказать это, что я знаю очень хорошо знаю, что есть много других людей, у которых есть или были там есть подобные проблемы. И я очень хорошо знаю, что такое как бы, такая душевная боль. И это совершенно невыносимо. И я хотела сказать людям, что можно из этого выйти, и можно перестать страдать как бы так сильно.
But for me, this is also a very important part of the project because I intentionally made it public so everyone could see it. Because my goal and my desire is to exactly show that I know very, very well what it feels to have that deep, deep pain inside of you. And I also know that there are a lot of other people who either had been in this situation or are in this situation and experience the same similar pain, which is unbearable. And with this project, I want to show that it is possible to get out of this circle and leave this pain.
Да. Что еще я хочу сказать? Вообще, как бы, это подходит, этот проект подходит для фестиваля Burn, хотя это было, конечно, медленное сжигание. Я думаю, что я закончу. Елена, я надеюсь, что это было в порядке переводить меня. Да, спасибо тебе большое.
И тебе спасибо. So to wrap up, Max is saying that she thinks this project fits the festival and the topic burn, although it's was slow process of burning, but that's it of this presentation. And thank you, Max. And now I think we have to move to Q&A. And I want to thank again all the artists for amazing works and the works and also how you talked about it, because I think you explain a lot in a very detail your processes and your ideas behind it. So now the challenge is, what shall we ask you? Is there anyone in the auditorium, maybe with Steve, who can ask us if they want something? No, cause yeah. So if you maybe now, because there is also a great chance for you free not to be in the emailing, but now you can also ask each other questions about the work. So what was how, because since you work with the similar topics and the works probably resonated with your own practices. Да, мы думаем, что можно спросить у друг друга вопросы.
Да, я поняла, окей, да, все в порядке.
Да.
Я могу сказать что-то? Ира, во-первых, да, но не сейчас, как бы, у меня настолько сильные впечатления, что я сейчас, мне надо переваривать информацию.
So I'm having a really strong emotions and impressions right now to just instantly come up with a question. So I need to think about it a bit and digest the information. That's from Max.
I think I have a question to the other two artists that do you guys think it is necessary to make art only about things which you have personally experienced? Or do you, because I think maybe not all of your projects were like that, but do you think that adds a certain quality which is maybe stronger than other works of yours, or do you think it doesn't really matter what your thoughts or experiences on this?
I was thinking actually a lot about that recently, or in the past few years. I would say I'm focusing a lot on this thematic. Actually, it's in my mind constantly, and I have to say that if I look my personal experience or practice, if I go back, I don't know, 10 years, I feel like I was dealing a lot with topics which are not so personal to me. I was more like observer of the things I find in society which are interested, and I was focusing on that and using it in my work. But I think year by year I'm stepping closer to myself, and I'm going into my personal experience. I don't know exactly why is that the reason. Maybe just because it's all of my works now started to be very complex. Not they take more time to develop. Also, the budgets are a bit bigger, so I have more space and opportunity and time to work on specific topics. And I think that's also the reason why I'm now also challenging myself to be a bit more sincere and honest with myself. Who am I? This is the question I'm asking myself a lot, especially with my actual body changes as well. But I feel that in artworks, I don't think it's like a recipe or you have to be in certain way. But I feel that the artworks which I also cherish a lot of other artists are the ones who are very personal and intimate, and that they show also the personal and deep side of the artist. So in a way, I would say it's quite important in a way to include a lot of yourself in the artwork, but it's not the only way. So yeah, I think it depends of an artist, of course, but if I go through my personal experience of me working in arts, I feel that recently I'm dealing a lot with this question, and I'm also thinking about next steps in my work. And I feel, I'm going in my deeper levels of my feelings and emotions. And also the question is how much I want to share, with the audience, because in a way, when you start to share a lot of your personal things, you become vulnerable, sorry, as well. And yeah, it's a process, and I think it's quite interesting how you can actually connect the work and personal life and the public. So yeah, it's an interesting question.
It's kind of interesting as well that, for example, for this project of mine, it wasn't personal, or at least in an overt way, it wasn't personal. Mm-hmm. But then afterwards, I was actually a kind of subject of a report thing where, like, not a political thing, but just like among friends, that someone was reporting of me to another friend. And it was interesting that I experienced exactly that only just after I made the project. So, that's an interesting thing as well, that maybe it doesn't have to literally be an event that has happened before. Yeah. Maybe you feel it coming, or I don't know, it could be interesting as well.
Yeah, and I think, in your case and in all these similar cases, I would say that this is another level which is maybe part of our subconscious, and we are then expressing it through art in this way. So your works for me seemed very personal as well, but of course in another level. So yeah, it was really interesting, and also visually it's very nice. I wanted to ask, did you work on like some kind of special program like Unity, or what did you use for the
Well, thank you. And a Blender.
Blender. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. The free 3D modeling software, which is accessible for anyone. But it has various rendering engines, and the more complex rendering engine provides the possibility to use more exciting, distorting camera lenses, and that's how I could do the fisheye lens.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. And regarding the question, your now can we hear Mark's opinion on the using personal as a topic of the artwork?
Елена, ты можешь перевести, пожалуйста, вопрос?
Да, вопрос был про то, что какое отношение к использованию именно вот темы очень близкой, основанной на своей жизни, в своей работе. И другие ли работы у тебя тоже связаны со своими, основаны на себе, как бы личные работы очень или нет? Вот, на таком. И вообще, как твое отношение к использованию личного в искусстве?
Во-первых, мне кажется, в принципе, в искусстве у всех, наверное, я не знаю, личное — это как бы один из самых важных аспектов или двигателей. И, наверное, да, но мне кажется, что все-таки этот проект, он самый личный, и как бы и мне кажется, что только в этом проекте я углубилась настолько как бы в себя, и там я была просто, вообще как-то там не здесь, не в этом мире. То есть это самый личный мой проект.
So this is the most personal out of my projects. Like super, super personal. I never went that deep into my own world. Like with this project, like it seemed that I was not even existing in this world, how deep I went with the personal. But I also believe in every artworks. The personal is like a starting point, like an engine to many things.
Я приведу в пример как бы тому, что я имела в виду, когда сказала, что мне кажется, что для артиста и вообще в искусстве, наверное, все идет от личного. Я покажу работу, которая случайно здесь. У меня за спиной. Я не дома.
Okay.
Вот. Okay.
So I'll give you an example to comment on why I said that the personal is like an engine and starting point, because I think for every artist, many things coming from personal, either interest or just from something from within. And now I'll show you a spontaneous example of an artwork that is just happened to be behind me because I am not at home now.
Собственно, я не знаю, как это видно.
Насколько
это видно. Собственно, у меня в руках скульптура. Наверное, видно, что это женщина.
I'm holding a sculpture, and I hope you can see that it's a female body.
И если это заметно, я думаю, что это заметно, собственно, скульптура напоминает доисторические статуэтки и скульптуры женские, то есть female sculpture.
So I hope you can see, but I think you can see that the sculpture reminds of the prehistorical statues and especially sculptures of female bodies.
Окей. Окей. Что это за работа? Это скульптура собственно, в которой я хотела передать 3 образа. Женщина, как бы, the mother, Gaia and Venus. То есть, как бы образ матери, образ женщины, как бы, и образ, Гая, как бы, образ матери как источник всего живого.
So in this sculpture, I wanted to show 3 milestones, like a woman, a motherhood, a Venus, Gaia, and also motherhood in a sense of not like only motherhood to giving a birth to a child, but motherhood as like the unifying force of the whole and alive.
Ну, то есть это тоже очень личная как бы работа, но, конечно, не настолько.
So, for example, this work is also very personal one, but then it is not the same level of personal as the work that I showed at the festival.
Я думаю, мне кажется, что я ответила на вопрос.
I think I answered the question. Any other questions from between you two?
Yeah, I would maybe like to ask Max, because she's dealing a lot with this topic of self-injury, which is still a bit of taboo, I feel, especially in my surroundings. How is the usual reaction of exhibitions? Is there a lot of talks about that, or do they see, in deeper levels, not just the first reaction, oh, there's an injury, but is there a talk which happens that is also about, because self-injury is a lot about psychology as well. So do you feel that through your artwork you see that this is not anymore a taboo, or is it still a bit discussion around it as a taboo, the topic of self-injury, maybe?
Окей, Елена, переведи, пожалуйста, чтобы я просто не пропустила ничего, на всякий случай.
Да, но вопрос был про вот self-injury, самонанесение именно себе, собственно, ран, и это, в принципе, как минимум в окружении Валерии это все равно такой табу вокруг этой темы, и не все о ней говорят. И какие реакции были на выставках по поводу твоей работы? Люди как-то понимали, более глубокую смысл и послание этого проекта, или они видели только, что вот это раны? И вообще, как разговор о психологии и вот о внутренних проблемах вокруг твоей работы происходит, это ты видишь, как уже сейчас это меняется, такие темы, это больше не табу, или все равно вот самобичевание, это все равно какое-то табу?
Окей. Марта мне задала вопрос. Во-первых, Марта сказала, что в ее окружении, значит, это до сих пор...
Валерий задала вопрос.
Окей. Валерий. Сори. Я просто, там где-то... Окей. Мне очень... Я сожалею слышать, что в твоем окружении это до сих пор табу говорить о, значит, self-injury.
So I am sorry that at least in your surroundings, that it's still a taboo to talk about self-injury.
Это такой некий показатель общества, мне кажется.
I think it is like some indicator or like a mark of the society.
Да. Значит, вторая или третья часть вопроса, то, что после этого проекта, значит, это до сих пор табу или уже нет. Helena?
So the last part of the question...
Я могу снова сказать, если хочешь.
Нет, я думала, ты будешь продолжать. So the last part of the question is about, is it still a taboo or is it not a taboo?
Yeah, like how... because I assume that you work with this topic for many years now. Do you feel the change, or is it more understandable in the society through the past couple of years?
Так как работа заняла 3 года или больше, именно вот в этом контексте, заметила ли ты какие-то изменения с начала того, как ты начала этот проект, до конца, именно в отношении того, как люди видят такие проблемы?
Во-первых, я думаю, что даже не... Конечно же, есть изменения, и были, и есть, и происходят. Может быть, не на глобальном уровне, как бы, всего земного шара, но, по крайней мере, как бы в моем окружении и в окружении людей, с которыми я общаюсь, да, происходят и произошли изменения.
So, of course, the changes, I can see them, and they have been happening, and they're still happening, and maybe I cannot say about the global and the whole world, but at least in my surroundings and with people I am talking to, I can definitely see that changes are happening.
То есть я хочу объяснить, что именно я имею в виду, когда я сказала, что, как бы, например, в моем окружении это уже нет. Потому что, когда я работала над проектом, например, у меня, как бы, начался камин-аут какой-то, процесс камин-аута, потому что я начала говорить о проекте и что за этим стоит, как бы. Начала говорить с друзьями и с близкими, то есть с теми, кто меня окружает.
So I want to explain what I mean by saying that I noticed in the changes. So when I started working on the project, it was like a coming out to me. So I started, of course, discussing the project with my friends and with some people when I started it.
Ну, как бы, и, во-первых, это было просто, большой сюрприз для меня, да, моя такая реакция, когда я увидела, что люди как бы совершенно спокойно и, неспокойно, и они это, как бы, они меня принимают, и они меня понимают, и никто, как бы, не отреагировал так, что ой, какой ужас, как бы, о май гад, и, как бы, вот так вот, да, нет, такого не было, и меня это очень удивило, как бы, это был очень-очень приятный сюрприз.
So when I started talking about it, it was a surprise to me because the people were very accepting and understanding about the topic, and no one was reacting like, how disgusting, what is this? And for me, that was a very pleasant surprise that people were understanding.
Ну, соответственно, как бы потом, когда я сказала I like a skin, который, как змея в конце проекта, которая, значит, снимает свою старую кожу, когда окончательно, значит, вылезла из этой старой кожи, то у меня вообще не было проблем говорить об этом ни с друзьями, ни там с посторонними людьми, как бы вообще, в принципе. И с кем угодно, когда угодно, да. Вообще говорить об этом спокойно. Более того, я делала это с определенной целью, чтобы другие люди, это очень-очень важно, перестали бояться и начали говорить об этом.
So, by the end of the project, when, like I say in the work, I was like a snake who finally got out of the old skin and went through the transformation, I had no problem at all speaking about it to my friends, to people I don't know, to strangers. I could, and I still can talk about it with anyone, and I can talk about it very calmly and confidently. And also I'm doing it with one purpose, and it's, I think, a really important purpose. So people understand that it's a okay topic to talk about, and there is shouldn't be a taboo to talk about it. That's why also I can discuss it with anyone.
Я думаю, что, мне кажется, что все.
That was the reply.
Thank you. When you said about being a snake coming out of the skin, I really I can also see myself a bit in this description. So since today's discussion is about the skin, I think it's very interesting how, not just in our works, in this case 3 of our works, but in general, lately I'm noticing a lot of works dealing with the body, especially in the last 2 years. I think maybe it's because we are, as a society in general, working a lot with unmaterialistic things, meaning a lot of virtual technology. And I think there's some kind of urge that humanity is now trying to return back to our own bodies and feel ourselves again. So this is just my general observation of what I see around myself, that we are a bit maybe afraid that we will become bodiless. That's why when I'm working with these new media things, for example, like neural networks or artificial intelligence, I think that's a lot of discussion around the fear of becoming not anymore in charge of our own bodies. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting topic to talk in long term. How much do we allow ourselves to be in our bodies and see ourselves, and in general, just this topic is interesting to me as an observation of the society.
I also think that there's an interesting duality, that a wish to deal with our bodies in a different way, but I think also society, because of, say, social media, we are very much obsessed with our bodies and very much obsessed with the depiction and visuality of our bodies, and also obsessed with sculpting our bodies by food and by exercise. And I actually think that maybe that's even developing, and I mean that is definitely, I guess, getting more and more radical as the years are going on. So so maybe like a kind of superficial controlling mentality, and also commodifying it and making it visually appealing is what is happening. And then maybe and also with COVID as well, that's all about focusing on our bodies getting ill or not. But yeah, I definitely think that there is like there are lots of different ways of trying to break out of this and deal with our bodies in a healthy way. But then I guess there's always that dangerous spiral, but then that gets commodified, like, I don't know, doing yoga and then mindfulness and mindfulness apps and all that.
Yes. And since you mentioned, Martha, the social media, and I immediately then return back to your topic of surveillance. I think we are self-surveilling ourselves constantly in this way and giving so much information. Being unaware of that, how much information we share. about our location, about our bodies, also about everything. So this topic of surveillance in the connection of the body is also quite important to talk and being aware of, I would say.
Definitely, and you know, like obviously there are like sports apps and things like that, but you know how, for example, there are applications for the female cycle.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe this is also interesting for us all to talk about this. But like, for example, I don't use that, and I'm not like, I've got friends who are really, really supporting me to like, you know, do it, try it out, it's really useful, etc. But in a way, I don't feel like I want my phone to know about that, and B, I don't think I want to have to do this like self-bureaucracy of daily commenting on like my various physical attributes of my sexual organs. I think that's kind of, you know, what, for example, like in this case, do you guys think that's worthwhile or dangerous, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's quite slippery slope, I would say. I mean, I'm wearing the smartwatch for this. I'm tracking my runs and some sports things, but I'm always a bit skeptical. What else am I sharing with this smartwatch, and to who? You know, who's on the other side is the question. Because I mean, in general, this data is not dangerous per se, but it depends who owns this data and where it gathers. And I don't know, these things are then important to maybe discuss, and also not just discuss, but also find the answers, like who is on the other side. So yeah, it's important.
Yeah, and also like you just think imagining that if they use this information for you to like pre-calculate, something might happen to your body, and then start advertising you.
Yeah, and then you will get special vitamins sponsored constantly or something. Yeah.
But it's the same with the pregnancy. I think there's already there are cases where the app would know before the woman would know if she's pregnant, because based on the way what you shop and all of these, then there's the algorithm, and I guess like all of the combination of little cues it gets, and that's also very scary. But at the same time, it's like great. I know now. Thanks.
Thank you for letting us know.
Yeah, and then the opposite cases of, because I think now there is the apps. I think there's so much reliance on the app and the body that it can be so accurate that we just like, there may be mistakes also, like miscalculate. And there was also one app that was supposed to be the birth control app, and I think 1/3 of the users of the app actually got pregnant, but because they were trusting the app that would tell them what are the dates. So they still, like, the fact that we all as humans are so different and unique, and you cannot just fit in what is written in the programs for them, because they are generalizing us, right? And I think it's like in Martha's work, all the bodies that look the same, because for these apps we are the same. We just like this mass, but we all just have these little differences that is impossible to put there.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
I'm the co-director. I had to actually leave the auditorium to speak to you via Zoom. I want to thank all of you for your works and for being in this event. You all are so wonderful artists, and it was really important to hear you talk about the context of your work. And I really think that there's maybe it's the taboo thing is mostly seen in Max's work, because there's this kind of taboo nature for harming your own body. But there's also taboo in Martha and Valerie's work in that way. I think that Valerie, you are talking about your own body, and as a woman, like, it's always, no matter what you do, no matter what you say about your own body, it's always wrong. It's either no matter, like, yeah, it's just always wrong. But also in Martha's case, there's this, like, it's always almost like what you were talking about, that we feel kind of need for surveillance, and we want to actually, there's this need or want to be surveilled, for instance with these watches and all kinds of apps and that, and it's something that it's not very nice to admit that one kind of likes to be or seeks to be surveyed. But yeah, I wanted to come here and say something and say, especially say thank you all, because I have to go to another place now. But yes, it was a pleasure having you all here. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were so, I think, prepared, and all of you gave so much, I think, already answers to my potential questions. So now I also need to think hard. But maybe one thing would be also, like Valerie was saying, about the reactions to the works, but more in a context. For example, we are showing it now in Finland, and in Finland there's a big culture of sauna, where you go naked, often with a stranger or friends, and share the space with your naked body, and no one thinks of the body that much of a sexual, because of sauna here is such a big part of everyone's life. But then, for example, if I'm from Russia, like female, especially female naked body is like something sacred that everyone have to see. And I remember I had a talk with a Finnish friend, and in the mid of my question, I realized that he didn't have a similar teenagehood, because when I was teenager, then the puberty comes, and then there are all these fights, or like the boys trying to get a look of the first boob and all of these things. And then here, when it's a sauna, you just always see the body, and you have to see your grandparents, grandmother's boobs when you're a kid, and just like you don't think of the body in that sexual way. Or in the United States, if you're naked in a public, you are in the sex offender list, and then here you go in a public sauna, all the naked together. So that I lead to the fact that I think your work's seen also differently here in Finland, because of that attitude to the naked body is quite different, and I think amazing here. But what are the reactions from the other countries? Or like, do you spot the differences in the way people pay attention to different things in your work that you expect to, or something around that?
Can I say something?
Yes.
I want to so much thank you to all of to Martha, Valerie, and Helena, and I really think it was important, that it's important projects, important messages, and thank you everyone, and I was really happy to be here.
We are happy to have you. Any questions from the audience, Steve? Any questions from you? Again. Yeah, the same. That's, I think, a very, very informative talk. But we can also wrap if... yeah. Natural end.